The wind tore through Frostveil Canyon with a scream that could split stone. Aurielle Ravenshadow pressed herself to the jagged edge of the cliff, teeth gritted, knuckles white as her fingers dug into the ice. Every gust felt like a fist against her chest, every snowflake a dagger against her skin. She could barely see, her eyes watering against the storm, but still she ran, stumbling over frozen rocks that threatened to betray her with every step. Her boots slipped on the treacherous ground, scraping against jagged stones, and she caught herself only by sheer instinct, the adrenaline making her feel sharper, faster but more fragile all at once. Her arms burned. Raw claw marks, shallow yet searing, streaked with blood, glimmered in the pale light of the moon that fought to pierce the clouds. She flexed her hands reflexively as though testing if the pain might make her stop, and for a moment she let herself remember. The pack she had once called family, the ones who had promised safety, had branded her a threat. Their voices, sharp and echoing in memory, cut deeper than any physical wound. "Aurielle, you're too dangerous. Leave forever." She could still feel the weight of rejection pressing against her like a cold hand on her chest. The canyon itself seemed alive, a predator disguised as terrain. Snow swirled in twisted spirals, whipped by a wind that felt like intent, like it knew she was fleeing, like it wanted to catch her. The cliffs towered above her, jagged and unyielding, their frozen edges glittering like broken glass. Mist coiled around her legs, making each step a dangerous gamble. One slip, one miscalculated move and she would plunge into the void below. She had no choice but to keep moving. Her life depended on it, though every fiber of her body screamed to stop, to collapse, to let the storm take her. And yet beneath the fear a spark shimmered. Her hands tingled, her skin buzzing with the power she could never fully control. Silver energy flickered along her fingers, tiny sparks dancing like living creatures. It was erratic, wild, a reflection of her fear and desperation. She could feel it calling to her, whispering, daring her to embrace it, but she hesitated. That flame within her was beautiful, dangerous, unstoppable, and utterly unpredictable. The memories came unbidden, crashing over her in relentless waves. The day her mentor had warned her, the look of horror on the faces of those she had trusted, the accusation that she was too dangerous. Every betrayal, every harsh word, every rejection, it all burned inside her like ice fire. "You're too dangerous. Leave forever." Those words chased her as surely as the hunters now stalking her. Their presence was faint at first, subtle snaps of twigs, a shifting of the snow, the low vibration of a growl rolling through the canyon. Her body tensed, muscles coiled like springs, ready to flee, ready to fight. Every step she took made her heart pound harder, each breath a shallow gasp that burned her lungs. She stumbled, almost losing her footing on a slippery ledge, and caught herself against the jagged edge of rock, nails scraping into frost, snow crunching underfoot. For a moment she froze, staring into the darkness below, the abyss yawning like a maw waiting to swallow her whole. Her chest heaved. The cold bit into her lungs. But she couldn't stop. Fear had its claws in her, yes, but beneath it all, a stubborn, raw, unyielding thread of determination burned brighter than any fear. The wind howled again, louder this time, as if mocking her, as if calling her out. And then she heard it, the hunters. Close now. Their movements precise, silent, deliberate. She couldn't see them yet, but she could feel them, feel the way the air shifted with each step they took, the way the canyon seemed to guide them, to funnel them toward her. Panic clawed at her throat, sharp and unrelenting, but she forced herself forward. One step, then another. Her boots scraped against ice, her hands left shallow marks on the rocks, and the sparks along her fingertips flared brighter, responding to her heartbeat, to the fear that both crippled and fueled her. Aurielle's mind raced. Every instinct screamed survival, every nerve screamed caution, but beneath it all, beneath the terror and the adrenaline, a flicker of defiance burned. She would not be caught. Not like this. Not by anyone. She clenched her fists, feeling the energy inside her pulse in time with her heartbeat, the silver light weaving through her veins, lighting the snow around her in ghostly bursts. It was beautiful and frightening all at once, the raw power of her body asserting itself, refusing to be contained. She stumbled again, catching herself on a slick patch of stone, heart hammering in her chest. The hunters were close now. She could hear the faint whisper of their movement, the subtle crunch of snow beneath their feet. Fear threatened to overtake her, yet she forced herself forward, step by trembling step. She could almost see the moonlight breaking through the clouds, a pale silver glimmer guiding her path. Each breath was ragged, each heartbeat a drum against the cold, but she pressed on, feeling the silver flame coil and twist within her, responding to the panic, feeding on it, growing stronger with every desperate step. And in that moment, with the storm raging around her, with the snow lashing at her face, With the cliff threatening to betray her at any moment, she realized something. This power, this uncontrollable, terrifying, magnificent power was hers. And no one, no pack, no hunter, no betrayal, could take it from her. Aurielle Ravenshadow, trembling, bloodied and half-frozen, pressed onward, letting instinct and raw will guide her through the treacherous canyon. She could feel the energy pulsing in her hands, lighting up the snow in brief flashes, illuminating the path in ghostly silver. Each flash was a heartbeat, a pulse of life, a reminder that she was alive, that she was dangerous, that she was powerful beyond measure. The howls grew closer. She knew she couldn't outrun them forever. And yet she felt something deep inside her, a whisper of hope, fragile but unbroken. Maybe survival wasn't just about fleeing. Maybe survival was about embracing what she was, what she could be. She let herself imagine the power coursing through her fully, not restrained, not hidden, not feared, but claimed. And in that vision, in that impossible hope, she found the strength to take another step, then another, until the cliffs and the storm and the hunters themselves felt like mere obstacles to be overcome. Her body was screaming in pain, exhaustion clawed at her muscles, yet she ran. The silver flame within her flickered and roared, erratic and wild, lighting the snow in sparks that danced like fireflies against the night. Each movement, each stumble, each breath, each heartbeat was a declaration. She would not fall. Not now. Not ever. And somewhere, beyond the wind, beyond the snow, beyond the ice and the terror, Aurielle knew that this was only the beginning. That every moment of fear, every pulse of adrenaline, every flicker of silver fire was preparing her for something greater, something inevitable. The hunters might be close, the cliffs treacherous, the storm unrelenting, but she had the power. She had the will. And if she could survive this night, she could survive anything. So she ran, breathless, heart-pounding, silver flame blazing, across the jagged cliffs of Frostveil Canyon, chasing hope, fleeing fear, embracing the raw, dangerous fire that had always been inside her. And if you want to follow Aurielle Ravenshadow as she faces betrayal, discovers her true power, and finds a love that burns hotter than the coldest nights, subscribe to Anne's Romance Collections. Because her story has only just begun. And trust me, you do not want to miss a single heartbeat of it. Aurielle barely had time to register the way the canyon seemed to close in on her before she saw him. At first, it was only a shadow, a tall, broad shape moving with an almost unnatural precision over the jagged cliffs. The wind howled around them, snow whipping in all directions, yet he moved like he was untouched by the storm. His form was imposing, dark against the pale silver of the frozen canyon, yet there was something in the way he moved, something that spoke of control, of power masked by careful restraint. She froze mid-step, heart hammering, eyes wide, unsure if he was friend or foe. Her instinct screamed at her to run, to flee, to put as much distance as possible between herself and whoever, or whatever, he was. But there was something magnetic about him, something that rooted her to the ice. His presence was impossible to ignore. Strong, dangerous, but not cruel. Yet she could sense the tension coiled in his body, the way his muscles flexed beneath the long coat he wore, how his eyes, sharp and piercing even in the dim stormlight, tracked her movements with unnerving precision. Then he spoke. Aurielle Ravenshadow, you cannot hide from destiny. The words hit her like a bolt of lightning reverberating through her chest, through her very bones. He knew her name. Knew it without her telling. And in that moment every instinct, every fear, every fragmented piece of her past, the exile, the betrayal, the nights she had spent shivering and running, coalesced into one sharp, searing awareness. This man was no ordinary predator. He was something else entirely. Something ancient, something powerful, something that could see through the walls she had built around herself. She tried to speak, to demand who he was, to scream at the unfairness of it all, but the storm swallowed her words before they left her lips. She could only watch as he moved closer, each step deliberate, measured, silent despite the snow crunching beneath his boots. And then she noticed the way his body seemed off. His right leg was stiff, the way he carried himself slightly uneven as though some hidden wound slowed him. Her mind registered it almost automatically. He was crippled, or at least he appeared so. Yet the way he moved, the way his body shifted, the barely perceptible power in his stance, suggested that the injury was not what it seemed. There was deception there, a secret, and it only made her more wary, more fascinated, more alive with fear and curiosity all at once. Before she could react, the growl came. Low, dark, rolling through the canyon. Not from her but from something far more dangerous. Shadow beasts, creatures of the night, their forms twisted and unnatural, eyes glinting with hunger, emerged from the swirling snow and fog. Aurielle's heart leapt into her throat, terror threatening to paralyze her. She knew she could fight, she knew she could unleash the silver energy that sparked along her fingertips, but there were too many, and her exhaustion, her injuries, and her fear combined to make her hesitate, even for a fraction of a second. That fraction of a second could have been her last. Ronan moved like lightning, his voice calm but commanding. "Aurielle, get behind me." In a blur of motion he lunged forward and she finally saw the truth of him. The crippled act, if it had ever been real, was gone in the moments of action. His body moved with lethal precision, powerful, fluid, almost terrifying in its efficiency. Shadow beasts lunged at him, snapping jaws and slashing claws, yet he intercepted each one with a calculated swipe, a strike, a twist. He fought like a predator born to command, and yet there was no cruelty in his movements. Every strike was purposeful, every block measured. He was both hunter and guardian, a contradiction that made Aurielle's chest tighten in ways she didn't fully understand. Her fear and fascination collided. She had fled the hunters, she had fled her pack, she had fled betrayal and pain, and yet here was a man who seemed both predator and savior, danger and safety intertwined in one impossible form. And in that impossible form she felt an undeniable pull, an attraction she wasn't ready to name, one that stirred something deep inside her chest. The beasts advanced in coordinated fury, eyes glowing in the snow, bodies moving with uncanny speed. Aurielle felt a shiver run down her spine, the thrill of terror and excitement mingling in a way that made her pulse race. She wanted to fight. She wanted to run. She wanted to collapse and cry. But she stood frozen, watching him, feeling the power he exuded like a tangible force in the frigid air. And then, just as the largest of the shadow beasts lunged at her, he was there, a dark shape intercepting it, his hands gripping its jaw with unnatural strength, his eyes meeting hers for a heartbeat of acknowledgement before the creature was flung aside like a rag doll. "Move," he commanded, voice low, resonant, unwavering. Aurielle barely moved, stunned by the fluid violence and undeniable authority he radiated. He was a paradox she couldn't decipher. Crippled yet unstoppable, human yet otherworldly, intimidating yet magnetic. And in that single glance, the tension between them coiled tighter, almost unbearable. She didn't know if she should trust him, fear him, or let herself be drawn closer. She only knew that she couldn't take her eyes off him. Another growl, sharper this time, and Ronan spun, intercepting another shadow beast, his movements precise, yet deliberate enough to allow her to take a step backward. Her body reacted automatically, adrenaline surging, heart hammering, pulse echoing in her ears. She was alive, barely but alive. And every beat of her heart was marked by the knowledge that it was because of him, because of the man she barely understood but already couldn't ignore. The storm around them seemed to bend to his presence. Snow swirled differently where he moved, gusts shifted as if reluctant to challenge him, as if even the wind acknowledged the authority he carried. And still, despite the danger, despite the chaos, despite the raw, dangerous tension that thrummed between them, he moved toward her once more, voice calm but urgent. "Aurielle now. Don't hesitate. Trust me." She did not know why, did not understand why, but she obeyed. Something in the timbre of his voice, the firmness of his command, the certainty of his power, quelled the fear that threatened to consume her entirely. She stepped forward, staying just behind him as he fought, feeling the sparks of silver energy along her skin react to the raw, concentrated force of his presence. They moved in tandem now, predator and prey, savior and saved, in a delicate dance of survival. For a moment, as he fended off the last of the shadow beasts, snow falling in chaotic swirls around them, Aurielle could see the truth in his eyes. They were dark, yes, but they were also conflicted. There was war there, between duty and desire, between restraint and the raw power he wielded. She felt it, felt the subtle shift in the air, the unsaid words hovering between them. He knew her. Not just her name, but the fear that drove her, the power she hid even from herself, the scars left by betrayal and exile. And in that knowing, there was an unspoken connection, electric and dangerous, that made her stomach twist in a way she couldn't name. The snowstorm began to ease slightly, the wind no longer biting as sharply as if the canyon itself were holding its breath. The shadow beasts had receded, forced back into the darkness from which they came. Ronan stood before her, chest heaving, coat torn but unbroken. His eyes found hers again, and this time there was no command, only an intensity that made her want to lean in, to confess, to flee, to fight, all at once. "You should not be here alone," he said, voice low, yet carrying a weight that pressed on her chest, making her pulse quicken. "But you are. And now, you have nowhere to hide. Not from me, not from destiny." Aurielle swallowed hard, breath fogging in the icy air, fingers trembling as the silver energy flickered along her skin. She wanted to ask questions, demand explanations, but the words caught in her throat. She could only stare at him, sensing the layered contradictions he carried: crippled and unstoppable, guarded and magnetic, dangerous and protective. She could feel the tension thrumming between them, electric and unrelenting, like a live wire connecting their fates in ways neither of them yet understood. And then, just as her heart threatened to betray her with its rapid, frantic rhythm, he extended a hand toward her. Not a hand of command, not a hand of threat, but an offering, a lifeline in the storm. And in that moment, with the silver energy dancing along her fingers, with the snow swirling like spirits around them, Aurielle made the first choice that would forever bind her life to his. She took it. And the world shifted. Aurielle Ravenshadow stumbled through the last sprawl of snow-laden terrain before Ashen Hollow emerged, a dense, shadowed refuge where ancient trees loomed like silent sentinels. Their gnarled branches twisted overhead, forming a protective canopy that filtered the pale moonlight into fractured patterns on the forest floor. Every step she took was heavy, weighted with exhaustion, with the lingering thrum of adrenaline still pounding through her veins. The silver energy flickered along her fingers again, small sparks illuminating her path as if the forest itself recognized her presence and hesitated before embracing her. She paused at the edge of a fallen log, her breath misting in the icy air, her chest rising and falling in a rhythm dictated more by fear than by calm. Her legs shook not just from fatigue, but from the tremors of a memory she could not suppress, a memory that clawed at the edges of her mind like a persistent ghost. Ashen Hollow had always been a sanctuary for those who were lost, those who could not belong, those who had been exiled. Yet even here, in this seemingly safe embrace of shadowed trees, Aurielle felt a deep, gnawing unease. She had no allies, no pack, no one she could trust. And yet she could not ignore the way the forest seemed to breathe around her, the subtle shift of the air as if acknowledging her presence. Her fingers brushed against the rough bark of a tree, and she felt the residual hum of the silver flame in her veins, a constant, restless pulse that reminded her of what had made her dangerous, what had made her exiled, what had made her so desperately alone. She sank to the forest floor, leaning against the cold, damp trunk of a tree, and let her mind drift backward, tracing the painful path that had led her here. She remembered the day she had been cast out from her pack, memories sharp and jagged. They had called her uncontrollable, branded her as a danger to everyone she loved, everyone who had once called her family. "You're too dangerous, Aurielle. You could destroy everything we hold dear." Those words had sliced into her like a knife, leaving wounds far deeper than any physical injury ever could. She had pleaded, argued, begged for understanding, but there had been no compromise, no second chance. Only rejection, only exile, only the cold, relentless judgment of those she had trusted most. And then the betrayal, the one she had never seen coming until it was too late. Her closest ally, someone whose loyalty had once been unquestioned, had turned, had taken sides against her, had left her to face danger alone. That treachery had left a scar not on her skin, but on her soul, a wound that refused to heal. Every step she had taken since that day had been haunted by it. Every shadow had been a potential threat, every whisper of wind a reminder that she could trust no one. Aurielle's hands clenched, nails digging into her palms as she remembered the moment she had first felt the silver flame surge uncontrollably, a wildfire of power that had terrified everyone around her. She had tried to suppress it, to hide it, to bury it deep within herself, but it had erupted with a force she could not contain. Houses had caught fire. Trees had bent under the heat of her unrestrained energy. And the pack that had once embraced her had recoiled, fear etched into every expression. They had branded her a weapon, a threat, and then turned their backs. She shivered, not entirely from the cold. The memory of that fear, of that instant when power had overwhelmed reason, remained fresh as if it had happened only moments ago. She had wandered alone after that, moving from one hidden place to another, always wary, always alert. Every rustle in the leaves, every flicker of shadow had made her flinch, had made her question whether she would survive another day, whether she could even survive herself. And yet, even in that darkness, a fragile, stubborn light remained. A small spark of defiance, of hope, that whispered she was more than what others said she was. That her power was not just a curse but a gift. That she could survive. That she could endure. That she could, someday, control the silver flame and use it not as a weapon against others, but as a force for her own salvation. Her thoughts flickered briefly to Ronan Blackthorne, the Alpha who had appeared like a shadow in the storm. He was an enigma, a puzzle she could not yet solve. Supposedly crippled, yet undeniably powerful, dangerous yet protective, distant yet magnetic in a way that left her unsettled and curious all at once. She wondered, not for the first time, whether his secrets mirrored her own struggles. Whether beneath his calm, commanding exterior he wrestled with power and fear, with restraint and desire, just as she did. She imagined the way he had moved against the shadow beasts, fluid and precise, every motion a testament to control and discipline she had yet to master. And she wondered if, like her, he had known the loneliness of being feared, of being labeled a threat for the very thing that made him extraordinary. That thought made her chest ache in a way she couldn't explain. It was both comforting and terrifying to consider that someone so strong could be haunted, just as she was haunted. The forest around her seemed to lean closer as she sank further into reflection. Snow still fell lightly through the canopy, the flakes catching in her hair, melting on her flushed cheeks. She could hear the distant howl of wolves, the echoes bouncing off the trees, reminding her that she was not entirely alone, that she belonged somewhere, if she could only find the courage to claim it. Yet even that knowledge was tempered by caution. She could not afford to trust blindly. Not now. Not ever. The pain of betrayal was too raw, too permanent. Her mind wandered further, to the nights she had spent in hiding, shivering under the skeletal limbs of Ashen Hollow's trees, silver flame flickering weakly along her fingertips as she practiced control, as she fought against the fear that threatened to consume her entirely. Every misstep had left her exhausted, every failure a reminder of her dangerous nature. And yet, each spark of energy that had surged through her, each pulse of silver light that had illuminated the darkness, had filled her with a sense of possibility. That perhaps one day she could master it. That perhaps one day she could be more than the danger everyone claimed she was. Aurielle pressed her palms to her face, rubbing away the tears that had begun to fall, feeling the cold bite of the snowflakes on her skin. She tried to steady her breathing, tried to ground herself in the present, but the memories would not release her. She could see the faces of those who had cast her out, hear the voices that had condemned her, feel the weight of every rejection pressing on her chest. And yet, through it all, she remembered Ronan's presence, remembered the intensity in his eyes, the unspoken connection, the way he had saved her when she could not save herself. Could she trust him? Could she allow herself to let down her guard, to believe in someone else again after all that had been taken from her? The thought made her stomach twist, made her skin prickle with both fear and longing. And yet, deep down she felt the smallest spark of hope, fragile but insistent, that perhaps not all who wielded power were to be feared, that perhaps some could be allies, could be something more. Aurielle leaned back against the tree again, closing her eyes and letting herself imagine a life where her silver flame was not a curse but a gift, where she was not alone in the world, where she could trust someone and be trusted in return. The vision was fleeting, fragile, but it warmed her even in the bitter chill of the forest. It reminded her why she had survived, why she had kept moving, why she had endured the pain and the exile. And then the whisper came, faint but unmistakable, carried on the wind through the hollow, a reminder that her journey was far from over. That the past would not release her easily. That the danger, the power, and the choices she had yet to face would demand everything she had, and more. Aurielle opened her eyes, silver sparks flickering along her fingertips, and she knew she had a choice to make. She could hide, continue to flee through the shadows, continue to let fear dictate her path. Or she could stand, embrace the power that had defined her exile, and face the future with the same fire that had allowed her to survive so far. The howl of distant wolves echoed again, a reminder of the pack she had lost, the pack she had been denied, and the world she had yet to reclaim. Her chest tightened with a mixture of fear and determination, grief and longing, exhaustion and anticipation. Every emotion collided within her, each one sharper, more insistent than the last. He could not ignore them. She could not suppress them. They were part of her as much as the silver flame that ran through her veins, as much as the scars that marked her skin and soul. Aurielle Ravenshadow rose from the forest floor, brushing snow from her coat, lifting her chin despite the ache in her muscles and the tremor in her hands. She could not trust easily, that much was certain. She had been burned too many times, betrayed too often, left alone in the cold too frequently. But she also knew that the world would not wait for her to gather courage, that destiny did not pause, and that the fire inside her would not stay contained forever. And somewhere, beyond the hollow, beyond the snow, beyond the memories that haunted her, she felt a presence. A shadow that mirrored her own uncertainty and strength. A presence that suggested she was not entirely alone in the struggle to master power, to survive, to endure. Ronan Blackthorne. She did not know what he carried in his heart, what secrets he guarded, or whether she could ever truly trust him. But she knew this. Their paths were intertwined now, bound by forces neither could fully comprehend, and that their connection, tenuous, electric, dangerous, was only beginning to awaken. Aurielle Ravenshadow trudged through the dense, mist-wrapped forest, each step heavy with exhaustion yet driven by something she could not fully name. The snow had given way to thick roots and tangled undergrowth, and the trees loomed like ancient guardians, their skeletal branches arching overhead in silent, eternal watchfulness. Ashen Hollow was behind her now, its shadows lingering in her memory like a protective cloak she had outgrown. Ahead lay Eclipsed Grove, the sacred site whispered about in every legend, every hushed tale of the wolf clans. The very air seemed different here, charged, electric, vibrating with something older than time, older than the mountains themselves. She shivered as the wind stirred the branches above her, carrying whispers she could not fully hear. Her pulse quickened, silver sparks flickering along her fingers instinctively, responding to the latent magic in the grove. Every nerve in her body screamed awareness. She knew the grove was alive in ways humans could never understand, and perhaps even the wolves themselves could only feel its presence. But for Aurielle, for all her training, all her survival instincts, the grove was something else entirely. A call, a tug at the deepest part of her being. She was both terrified and magnetically drawn to it, the dichotomy tearing at her chest with every step. Behind her, Ronan Blackthorne followed silently, his presence a steadying force even amidst the eerie glow that began to light the horizon of the grove. His eyes, sharp and unrelenting, scanned the darkness, watching the shadows with that same predator's intensity she had witnessed on the cliffs of Frostveil Canyon. Yet she could feel his gaze linger on her, protective but conflicted, an unspoken question burning in the tension between them. Duty demanded he remain vigilant, yet every instinct whispered in tandem with hers, a pull toward something more, something dangerous, something forbidden. Finally they reached the edges of Eclipsed Grove, where the trees opened into a clearing bathed in ethereal silver light. Symbols glowed faintly along the trunks and stones, ancient runes etched deep into the bark and moss, faintly humming in a rhythm that resonated with the beat of her own heart. Aurielle's breath caught. She had studied prophecies, had read every fragment of lore she could find, but nothing could have prepared her for the tangible living pulse of magic that radiated from this sacred place. The whispers of the grove seemed almost audible now, carried in a soft hum along the wind, murmuring her name with reverence and warning all at once. The one of the silver flame, the wind seemed to say, brushing through her hair and grazing her cheeks with fingers of mist and frost. Aurielle's pulse stuttered. Her chest felt tight, constricted by fear, doubt and something else. Something she could not yet name, a rising sense of destiny that pressed against her very bones. Could she possibly be the one the legends spoke of? Could she possibly bear the fire that so many had feared for centuries, the fire that could reshape the world? Her mind recoiled, recalling the exile, the betrayal, the countless times she had been branded dangerous, unworthy, unfit to belong. And yet the grove called her forward. From the shadows of the ancient trees, a figure emerged, elder vesper dusk, cloaked in flowing robes of deep midnight blue, eyes shimmering with the depth of ages, a staff carved from blackened oak gripped in one hand. Her gaze swept over Aurielle, sharp and penetrating, seeing into the flickering depths of the silver flame that pulsed faintly beneath her skin. The girl carries the fire the world fears, and hopes for, Vespera said, her voice a low melodic echo that seemed to vibrate with the very pulse of the grove. The words reverberated against the frozen earth, brushing along Aurielle's nerves and leaving her hollow and exhilarated all at once. Aurielle's hands clenched involuntarily, silver sparks flaring brighter. I'm not ready, she whispered, voice breaking, trembling against the weight of expectation. I don't know if I can control it, if I even deserve it. Vespera's eyes softened for a moment, just enough to let her know that understanding existed in this world, yet they remained stern, unyielding, filled with the wisdom of countless lifetimes. Readiness is not a gift, child. It is forged in fire. It is demanded by necessity. And you are the fire that the world has awaited. Whether you wish it or not, the prophecy moves through you. Aurielle exhaled, her breath fogging in the cold air. Her gaze fell to the ground, and for the first time, doubt threatened to swallow her whole. She was not the brave, controlled heroine that legends spoke of. She was claw-marked, bruised, trembling, untrained, a girl who had fled and hid from every pack, every hunter, every danger that had dared to confront her. How could she possibly be worthy of something so immense? Ronan stepped closer, his shadow falling across the glowing symbols of the grove, yet he did not speak. She felt his presence as keenly as if it were a shield draped across her shoulders, warm, protective, and relentless. He did not force her to rise, did not demand she claim her destiny yet, but the intensity in his gaze, the careful watchfulness of his posture spoke volumes. He understood her doubts. He understood the terror that had been clawing at her from the moment she had touched Frostveil Canyon. And somehow, despite the history of her fear and exile, she felt drawn to him, as if the magnetic pull of his power might be the one thing capable of steadying the wildfire that raged within her. The grove seemed to pulse in response, the silver light bathing them both as if aware of the connection, the tension, the unspoken dance of curiosity and caution between them. Aurielle could feel the pull toward Ronan as much as she felt the pull toward destiny itself, as though the two forces were intertwined, impossible to separate, each demanding a choice she wasn't ready to make. Do you feel it? Ronan's voice was soft but carrying a weight that made her startle. The fire in you, it calls not just to me but to everything around us. You cannot hide it, Aurielle. Nor should you try. She bit her lip, the spark of silver energy flaring brighter, responding to the sound of his voice, to the nearness of him, to the acknowledgement of her power and its danger. She did not trust easily, not anyone, yet she could feel that he understood more than he revealed. And that understanding made her heart thrum, made her pulse catch in ways that terrified her as much as it thrilled her. The elder's gaze returned to Aurielle, drawing her attention back to the grove, the glowing symbols, the whispering wind. The path will not be easy. There will be betrayal, tests, sacrifices, yet it is your flame that can bind or destroy. That is the burden of the one of the silver flame. Aurielle exhaled shakily, feeling the enormity of the moment pressing down on her. She was not a legend yet, not a heroine, not a master of her own power. She was a frightened, claw-marked, exhausted girl standing in a sacred grove, facing whispers of destiny she had never asked for. And yet, somewhere deep inside her, beyond fear, beyond doubt, beyond everything that had wounded her, a flicker of resolve began to take hold. She was the silver flame. She had survived everything that had been thrown at her, endured every betrayal, every exile, every fear. Perhaps she could survive this too. Ronan shifted beside her, his presence constant, unwavering, yet impossible to ignore. He did not speak again, but the protective tension radiating from him, the subtle, unrelenting strength he exuded, tethered her to the present. She could almost feel his heartbeat in the cold, his eyes following hers even when she could not look directly at him. And though she could not name it yet, there was a spark between them, a dangerous, magnetic current, both terrifying and exhilarating, that pulled her toward him even as destiny pulled her in its own unrelenting direction. The grove seemed to hum louder, the wind swirling around them in delicate spirals, as though the world itself recognized the birth of something impossible, something unstoppable. Aurielle's hands tingled as the silver flame responded to the pulse of magic in the grove, the ancient energy resonating with her very bones, whispering truths she could not yet understand. Do not doubt yourself, Elder Vespera intoned, voice echoing like distant thunder. The fire inside you will test you. The world will test you. But it is not the flame that defines you. It is the courage to wield it. And whether you embrace it or deny it, destiny does not bend. It moves through you and you must decide how it burns. Aurielle inhaled sharply, feeling the weight of those words settle like snow in her chest. The doubts would not vanish. The fear would not disappear. But for the first time she allowed herself to imagine mastery, to imagine purpose, to imagine a future where her silver flame was not a curse, but a tool, a weapon, a lifeline, and perhaps even a path to love she had never thought possible. Ronan stepped even closer, the tension between them almost unbearable. He did not speak, did not reach for her, yet the mere presence of his controlled, commanding energy was enough to anchor her trembling thoughts. And though she could not yet name it, she felt the first stirrings of something undeniable, a connection that would shape not only her destiny but theirs both. The grove's whispers intensified, glowing symbols pulsing brighter, silver light dancing along the frozen moss and stones. Aurielle's heartbeat quickened, echoing the rhythm of the sacred place. She was the one of the silver flame. He was feared. He was powerful. He was necessary. And she would have to face the storm to come, one step at a time, guided by courage, by fire, and by the enigmatic shadow who watched over her with as much desire as duty. Aurielle Ravenshadow had barely begun to understand the pulse of Eclipsed Grove when the first tremors of chaos arrived. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying with it an acrid stench, the unmistakable scent of malice, and the heavy footsteps of warriors who had come not in peace but in judgment. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the glowing runes as the air thickened, electric with hostility. Aurielle's skin prickled. Her silver flame flared instinctively, responding to the threat she could sense before she even saw it. From the edges of the grove, a low growl rolled through the mist, then another, then a chorus of guttural snarls. Figures emerged, humans, wolves, and creatures she did not recognize, twisted shadows of beasts that slithered and slunk across the snow. Her stomach dropped as the leader stepped forward, unmistakable even in the swirling fog. Darian Frostfang, rival alpha of the northern clans, exiled long ago for cruelty and obsession with control. His eyes burned with a feral intensity, his cloak of black and crimson catching the dim light like flowing blood, his loyalists flanking him like jagged stones in a river, ready to crush anyone in their path. Aurielle's pulse thundered in her ears. The silver flame inside her flickered, responding to the danger, restless, eager, impatient. She wanted to run, but she was already trapped between the forest's edge and the encroaching shadow beasts. Her heart clenched as the realization struck. She had never truly been alone before, and now she was facing an enemy that would not hesitate, that would take everything from her, that would destroy the fragile sanctuary she had only just begun to trust. Ronan Blackthorne stepped forward, body tensing, eyes dark with a storm that mirrored her own fear. He moved with authority, every step deliberate, calculated, controlled. But even she could sense the internal conflict tearing at him. The pack he led, the alpha duties he bore, demanded loyalty to the clans and to tradition. Yet here he was, standing beside her, protecting her even though it meant defying every rule he had sworn to uphold. His jaw tightened, his fingers brushing against the hilt of the dagger at his side, and she knew that beneath his controlled exterior, the storm was building. Darian's voice rang out, sharp and cutting through the stillness. "Aurielle Ravenshadow," he sneered, the words dripping with venom. "The girl with the silver flame. Dangerous. Unstable. Unworthy of the power she claims. The council demands her exile. You will not remain here." Aurielle's hands trembled as silver sparks danced along her fingers. I won't go," she whispered, her voice cracking with fear and defiance. Every fiber of her being urged her to flee, yet some stubborn ember inside her, the same spark that had carried her through exile and betrayal, demanded she stand her ground. She felt the pulse of destiny thrumming in the grove, responding to the call of the silver flame within her, warning her that this was only the beginning. The shadow beasts lunged then and the grove erupted in chaos. Twisted forms, fangs bared, claws extended, moved with unnatural speed, scattering leaves and frost in every direction. Aurielle's senses sharpened, instinct screaming. She saw Ronan intercept a massive beast, blocking its jaws with one arm while striking it down with lethal precision. Sparks of silver energy illuminated his movements in the dim light, revealing the fluid power he had kept hidden under the guise of a crippled alpha. Her chest tightened, not with fear this time, but with a mix of awe, relief, and a gnawing desire that made her pulse quicken. The council members, gathered near the ancient stones of the grove, began to shout, pointing fingers, denouncing her. Dangerous. Exile her. She will bring ruin. Their voices blended with the growls, snarls, and the thunder of footsteps, creating a cacophony that threatened to overwhelm her. Aurielle's eyes darted between them, between Darian and his loyalists, between Ronan and the beasts he held at bay. She felt a surge of helplessness, of rage, of desperation. She had been hunted before, betrayed before, and yet the isolation now, the sheer intensity of the world turning against her, was suffocating. Ronan's hand found hers in an instant, fingers locking with a grip that spoke volumes without words. Aurielle, you have to trust me, he said, voice low, fierce, unwavering. We will survive this. Together. But you have to move when I tell you. Aurielle nodded, though her mind raced. The council's accusations, Darian's presence, the shadow beasts. It was all too much, and yet she felt the tiniest flicker of hope in the way he held her gaze, in the promise unspoken in his stance, in the undeniable connection that refused to be ignored even in the heart of danger. She followed him as he moved with practiced fluidity, guiding her through the chaos, shielding her from attack after attack. The grove itself seemed to respond, the glowing symbols pulsing in rhythm with the silver flame that now surged stronger in Aurielle's veins. Her power flared instinctively, streams of silver light lashing out at the shadow beasts, forcing them back, scattering frost and mist in a dazzling display of raw energy. And yet, despite her growing command of the power, despite her desperate fight for survival, Darian advanced relentlessly, his sneer a knife cutting through the fragile sanctuary of the grove. Ronan's voice cut through the din, sharp, commanding. Aurielle, now. Run to the eastern ridge. She hesitated, panic clawing at her throat. Her instincts screamed to fight, to stand her ground, to unleash the full force of her silver flame. But Ronan's grip, his presence, his unwavering command tethered her just long enough to make the impossible choice. Flee. She tore herself free from the crowd of council members, dashing through the twisting paths of Eclipsed Grove, snow and leaves whipping past her, silver sparks trailing like fleeting stars. Behind her the clash of power erupted. Ronan moved with precision and fury, intercepting every attack, deflecting every blow aimed at her. She could hear him shouting, commanding, cursing, yet she could also hear the unspoken ache in his voice, the tension that gripped his chest as he fought not just beasts, but the world itself to protect her. He had chosen her over the council, over tradition, over loyalty, and that choice burned brightly in the frozen night, igniting something in her chest that was both hope and fear, desire and desperation. Aurielle stumbled along the ridge, breath coming in ragged gasps, silver energy dancing along her hands, illuminating the path ahead. She dared a glance back and the sight stole her breath. Ronan stood amidst the chaos, a pillar of shadow and power, defying the council, defying Darian, defying every force that sought to bring ruin to the grove. His body moved with deadly grace, yet she could see the strain etched into his face, the conflict in his eyes. The same conflict she felt in her own soul, between duty and desire, between fear and courage, between survival and surrender. Tears blurred her vision as she ran, the wind cutting across her cheeks, carrying with it the cries of the council, the growls of the beasts, the distant roar of Ronan's commands. She did not know if they would survive this night, if the grove itself would endure, if she would ever see him again. And yet, even in the depths of fear and despair, a small, stubborn ember of hope remained. He had promised protection, he had promised return, and somewhere deep inside she knew he would fight for her no matter the cost. The forest stretched endlessly before her, shadows thickening with every step, silver sparks trailing in her wake like fragments of stars. Every instinct screamed to turn, to look back, to fight beside him, yet she knew the moment to stand had passed. He had to survive. He had to endure. She had to trust that the bond they had begun to forge, fragile and untested, would hold, would guide them, would pull them back together when the storm had passed. Aurielle's heart ached with longing and fear as she disappeared into the folds of the grove, leaving behind the chaos, the council, the shadow beasts and Ronan. And yet, even as she ran, even as the silver flame pulsed fiercely in her veins, she could feel him watching, guarding, fighting in her place. Somewhere in the storm of the grove he had made a vow that no council, no rival, no shadow beast would break. And that vow, unspoken but undeniable, tethered her to him, pulled her forward and promised that this was not the end. But the grove was silent now, except for the distant echoes of battle and the whisper of wind through the glowing symbols. Aurielle Ravenshadow ran, heart-pounding, mind-spinning, body trembling, and yet, somewhere deep inside, a spark of determination flared. They would reunite. They had to. Somehow, against the odds, against the fury of the world, against the very forces that sought to destroy them both, they would find each other again. Aurielle Ravenshadow stumbled into the cavern, body trembling, breath ragged, heart still hammering from the chaos of Eclipsed Grove. Silverveil Cavern stretched before her, a hidden sanctuary carved into the mountains, the walls shimmering faintly with veins of crystalline silver that seemed to hum softly, echoing the pulse of her own heart. The air was cool, damp, and intoxicatingly silent, as if the world outside, the hunters, the rival Alpha, the council, no longer existed. Here, in the quiet hush of stone and moonlight, there was nothing but the sound of her own ragged breathing and the faint, steady presence of Ronan Blackthorne beside her. She sank to the cavern floor, knees drawn close to her chest, hands trembling as silver sparks flickered involuntarily along her fingers. The adrenaline that had driven her through the grove's chaos was fading, leaving a hollow ache of exhaustion and terror behind. She was raw, exposed, yet the weight of it all felt slightly less oppressive because Ronan was here. Not above her, not judging, not commanding, just here, a shadow at her side, a heartbeat she could feel pressing close even without touching. Ronan settled nearby, his back against the wall, shoulders tense, but his eyes, dark, unyielding and haunted, kept a soft, unwavering focus on her. He had been a storm in Eclipsed Grove, a force of nature that defied both enemy and expectation. And now, here in the quiet, he was something else entirely. A man who carried scars she could not yet name, burdens she could only sense, and a vulnerability that made her chest ache with curiosity and something far more dangerous. "You fought well," she whispered, voice trembling, not with mockery or awe but with something raw and human. You saved me." Ronan's eyes flicked toward her, briefly softened, but shadowed by an unspoken weight. "I didn't save you, Aurielle," he said quietly, voice roughened by strain. "I just kept the world from finishing what it's been trying to do since the day you were born." She frowned, uncertainty mingling with awe. "The world? You mean them?" Her hand twitched, silver sparks flaring slightly as she gestured vaguely toward the darkness beyond the cavern's mouth. "Darian Frostfang, the council, the beasts, they want me gone. Or dead. I don't even know anymore." Ronan's jaw tightened, his fingers brushing against the dagger at his side almost unconsciously. "It's not just them. It's everything, the pacts, the traditions, the lies that have bound all of us for centuries. I've fought my own betrayals, Aurielle. I've bled, been cornered, been forced to make choices I never wanted. I've carried scars you would not believe, and I've carried them alone because no one could understand what it means to be me. To be an alpha." Aurielle's pulse quickened. She could see it, the weight of leadership, the pain etched in the lines of his face, the subtle tension in his hands, the way his gaze softened when he looked at her but never fully let her in. You're alone too?" she asked softly, voice barely audible above the hum of the cavern. "You hide it, behind the crippled act, behind the alpha mask, but you carry it all inside?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead he leaned back, closing his eyes for a brief moment, letting the cavern's silence wrap around him. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, intimate, and raw. "Yes, I hide it. Because if anyone saw, if anyone knew, they would expect me to break, to bend, to destroy everything I've built. I've been betrayed before, Aurielle. By friends, by those I trusted, by those I loved. And I survived. I became stronger. But the scars never leave." Aurielle's chest ached as she listened, a lump forming in her throat. She had never imagined the alpha she had seen as invincible, as untouchable, could carry such weight, could bleed inside in ways no one would ever see. And yet here he was raw, exposed beside her, letting her witness a fragment of a soul she barely dared approach. She wanted to reach out, to touch him, to heal him somehow, but the fear lingered, whispering that she was too fragile, too broken herself. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths, fragile trust, and the faint hum of silver light dancing along the cavern walls. Then Aurielle exhaled shakily, letting the words escape. I haven't told anyone either, she admitted, voice low, almost guilty. About the silver flame, about how it's not just energy. It's more. It reacts to me, to my fear, my anger, my hope. I can't always control it. And sometimes I think it's too dangerous, that it could hurt everything I care about. Ronan's eyes darkened, sharp yet tender, as he leaned slightly closer. Aurielle, I see all of you. The darkness, the light, the fear, the hope. All of it. Every shard of you, every flicker of flame inside you. I see it, and I don't turn away. I don't run. But I stand. Her breath caught, chest tightening as a surge of something dangerous, unnameable, flared in her stomach. The silver sparks along her fingers danced brighter, as if responding to the pull between them. She looked up at him, really looked, and saw it. The storm of pain, desire, and vulnerability mirrored in his gaze. The raw, unfiltered truth of a man who had survived betrayal and emerged with strength tempered by understanding. The cavern felt impossibly small and impossibly vast all at once. Moonlight streamed through cracks in the ceiling, soft beams falling on them like silver threads weaving through shadow. The glow caught the glint of his eyes, the faint shimmer of her own silver flame, and in that suspended moment the world outside, the council, Darian Frostfang, the war, the prophecy, ceased to exist. There was only them, only this fragile electric tension, only the quiet truth that their connection was more than survival, more than duty. It was unspoken, urgent, and alive. Aurielle's lips parted slightly, a breathless whisper escaping. Can I trust you fully? Ronan's gaze softened, slow and steady, as though measuring the weight of her words, the fragility of her hope, the intensity of their shared past and uncertain future. I see all of you, he said again, voice low, reverent, heavy with promise. All of you, the darkness and the light. Every scar, every spark, every doubt. And I do not falter. Not now, not ever. You do not have to hide from me, Aurielle. You do not have to fight alone. The words hit her like a physical force, warm and grounding. Her pulse raced, silver sparks igniting and trailing like fleeting stars along her arms, and for the first time she felt a flicker of true trust. Not naive, not untested, but raw, instinctive, and electric. She wanted to reach for him, to close the gap, to feel the warmth of his hand on hers, to feel the tether that neither prophecy nor war could sever. Ronan leaned closer, the faintest hint of a smile brushing the corners of his mouth, softening the storm in his eyes. The air between them seemed to vibrate, charged with the dangerous pull of proximity, the magnetic tension of shared vulnerability and unspoken longing. The cavern hummed with the pulse of their silver flames, intertwined in rhythm, resonating against the crystalline walls, echoing the unbreakable bond forming between them. Aurielle's breath caught again, closer now, heart hammering against her ribs. She could feel him, Ronan's presence, his strength, his promise, and in that suspended moment every scar, every fear, every exile she had endured faded into insignificance. Here in Silverveil Cavern, with the moonlight catching the silver threads of her flame and the shadows tracing the lines of his face, she realized the truth. They were more than allies, more than Alpha and exile. They were mirrors, two fractured souls finding fragments of themselves in each other. Their faces drew closer, almost touching, breaths mingling in the silverlit air, eyes locked in a gaze that said everything words could not. Aurielle felt the pull, the dangerous, intoxicating pull, and her heart leapt, uncertain, terrified, exhilarated. Every instinct screamed to stop, to hesitate, to remember the dangers outside, yet every flicker of her flame, every heartbeat, urged her forward. And then the wind shifted in the cavern, whispering through the cracks in the ceiling, echoing the distant tremor of the world outside. The moment stretched, suspended between desire and restraint, trust and fear. They were on the edge of something powerful, fragile, and irreversible. An unspoken promise of connection that would define not just their hearts, but the very fate of the silver flame and the prophecy it carried. Aurielle swallowed hard, silver sparks coiling along her fingers like liquid fire, and she let herself linger in the intimacy, the trust, the connection, fragile yet unbreakable, knowing that whatever came next, war, betrayal, destiny, she was not alone. Not while he stood by her, not while he saw all of her, and not while the fire inside both of them burned in tandem, illuminating the darkness with raw, unyielding light. Aurielle Ravenshadow had felt the pull of destiny, the fragile tether of trust between her and Ronan, and even the faint glow of hope that had whispered in Silverveil Cavern. But now, standing at the edge of Eclipsed Grove once more, the illusion of safety shattered with a sound like cracking glass and ice underfoot. The council had convened in full, their faces masks of disdain and fear, their voices carrying the weight of judgment and centuries of rigid tradition. And from the shadows of the grove's outer edges, Darian Frostfang's figure emerged, every step deliberate, eyes burning with accusation and hunger for chaos. Aurielle's chest tightened as a council elder pointed an accusing finger at her, voice booming across the grove. This girl, the elder spat, words jagged as frost-covered stone. She bears the silver flame, a power forbidden, uncontrollable and catastrophic. Prophecy foretells that she will bring ruin to our lands. Every pack, every sacred grove, every innocent life will burn if she remains unchecked. A shiver ran through Aurielle, silver sparks flickering along her fingers involuntarily, a reflection of the surge of emotion twisting within her. Fear, disbelief, and a burning raw anger that churned like molten silver in her veins. She had fought for survival, she had survived exile, betrayal, and shadow beasts. But this public declaration, this venomous fear, cut deeper than any claw or fang could. Her pulse raced. Her hands shook. Her entire body seemed to hum in resonance with the accusation, as if the silver flame itself recoiled and pulsed at the injustice. Ronan's presence beside her was both comforting and agonizing. His hand rested lightly at the small of her back, a tether of reassurance, yet his eyes betrayed hesitation. The Alpha of Shadowspire Peak, feared, revered, and cunning, stood frozen in a very human moment of doubt. His jaw tightened, and she could see the war inside him. The loyalty he owed the council, the authority he carried as Alpha, and the unspoken devotion, the tether of care he held for her. For a brief, heart-stopping moment, Aurielle wondered if she would face this betrayal alone. Elder Vespera Dusk, robes billowing with the wind that swept through the grove, stepped forward, staff tapping against the frost-covered stones. Her voice, quivering with age but tempered with undeniable power, carried across the crowd. Her silver flame, it is neither curse nor gift alone. Can destroy us, or it can save us. The world trembles beneath its potential, and the girl herself does not yet understand the scope of her power. She is the one the prophecy speaks of, the child of fire, the flame that cannot be contained. And yet, perhaps she is more than fear allows us to see. Aurielle's stomach twisted. Every accusation, every whisper, every fearful gaze of the council felt like a blade carving into her soul. She wanted to scream, to defend herself, to let them all see the truth, that she was not a weapon of destruction, but a girl who had been abandoned, hunted, and exiled simply for being more than they were ready to understand. But her throat closed. Her hands clenched at her sides, silver sparks erupting in small, uncontrolled bursts. Her pulse thundered like a drum of war. And the tension in the grove was almost unbearable, as if the trees themselves held their breath, waiting for the inevitable storm. Darian Frostfang stepped forward then, voice a low growl, each word punctuated with venom. See her for what she is. The flame she carries will consume all that we hold sacred. You Blackthorne cannot hide this any longer. Choose, your pack or this abomination. His eyes flicked to Ronan, and the accusation hung in the air like frozen steel. Ronan hesitated, and that hesitation, public, undeniable, human, cut into Aurielle like a knife. She felt her chest constrict, anger rising hot and fierce, mingling with the fear, the despair, the humiliation of being exposed and judged for something that was both her gift and her curse. The silver flame inside her pulsed, reacting to every heartbeat, every insult, every shred of doubt cast upon her. The power she had struggled to control, to hide, to accept, demanded release. And then she could not hold it back. With a shuddering, trembling roar, Aurielle lifted her hands, silver fire erupting in blinding arcs along her arms. The ground trembled beneath her feet, frost-laden earth cracking as radiant waves of energy pulsed outward. Trees shuddered, branches splintering, leaves frozen midair before cascading like crystal shards to the ground. The air shimmered, charged with an intensity so fierce that even the shadow beasts at the grove's edges recoiled, hissing and retreating. Silver sparks twisted and coiled around her, weaving patterns in the air that seemed to speak of ancient, forgotten power. The council gasped, stepping backward in fear. Darian's expression twisted into rage and disbelief. "Stop her," he yelled, but even his command felt hollow in the presence of the raw, uncontainable energy spiraling from Aurielle. Ronan moved forward instinctively, hands raised not in attack, but in steadying, grounding presence. "Ori, breathe," he commanded, voice firm yet gentle, carrying the quiet authority of someone who knew both the storm and the calm that must follow. "Control it, but do not let them break you." Her chest heaved, silver flames dancing along her skin, pulsing with every surge of emotion. Fear, anger, betrayal, humiliation, they all fused into a single roaring inferno of energy. And yet, beneath it, a clarity emerged. She saw the faces of those who had doubted her, who had judged her, who had feared her power. And in that clarity she found something terrifying, exhilarating, and liberating. She would not be their victim. She would not hide. She would not kneel. Trees shattered under the force of her power, frost-coated stones cracking, and the very air vibrated with the resonance of silver flame. The council reeled, huddling together in panic, while Darian's loyalists faltered, uncertainty flashing across their faces. And in the midst of it all, Ronan remained steadfast, eyes locked on hers, radiating trust, presence, and unwavering devotion. The tether between them pulsed in rhythm with the power that now surged beyond containment, and Aurielle felt it. The transformation had begun. It was not just the silver flame that had awakened. It was something deeper, something ancient and primal, woven into her very being. The girl who had been hunted, exiled, betrayed, and afraid was changing. Her power was no longer a flicker, a spark struggling to exist. It was a roaring inferno, a force that demanded recognition, respect, and understanding. And in that fire she glimpsed the truth of herself. Fierce, unstoppable, and unwilling to be broken by fear, lies, or betrayal. Ronan stepped closer, unafraid of the radiance, the heat, the tremors. His eyes softened, shadowed with awe and something more intimate, something Aurielle could not yet name but felt in every fiber of her being. "It's beautiful," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. "All of it, all of you." Her chest tightened. She wanted to reach for him, to collapse into the safety of his presence, to let him anchor her amidst the storm of her own power. And yet, the rage, the heartbreak, the humiliation that had driven this eruption still burned hot inside her. She had been betrayed, judged, feared, but now she was seen. Truly seen in all her terrifying, glorious, incandescent truth. The council shouted again, accusations tumbling in panicked, broken tones, but their words fell like snowflakes against the roar of her power. Even Darian hesitated, stepping back, his confidence cracking in the face of something he could neither control nor destroy. Aurielle inhaled, letting the silver flame pulse and surge around her like living energy, illuminating the grove, painting every leaf, every branch, every stone with shimmering light. And for the first time she felt it, the beginning of her transformation, not just as a girl of fire, but as a force that could change everything, a power that could destroy or save, a destiny that would no longer be dictated by fear, by exile, or by those who sought to bind her. The frost on the ground shimmered, the air vibrated with electric energy, and the grove seemed to hold its breath, suspended between destruction and rebirth. Aurielle's heart thundered, chest heaving with a mixture of triumph, rage, and awe. She had been betrayed, yes, but she had risen. She had been exposed, yes, but she had become uncontainable. And as she met Ronan's unwavering gaze, she knew one undeniable truth. She was no longer a girl fleeing the world. She was the silver flame incarnate, and nothing, not council, not Darian, not fear, would ever make her hide again. The grove trembled around her, the trees shattered, frost glowing like crystal in the moonlight, and Ronan's voice broke through the roaring silence. "Aurielle, you are more than they fear. You are more than they see. And I will stand with you no matter the storm." For a fleeting moment, amidst the chaos, the frost, the roar of unleashed power, Aurielle Ravenshadow smiled. Not a small, timid smile, but a blaze of recognition, understanding, and defiance. The mask had dropped, the betrayal revealed, the silver flame had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same. The wind tore through Eclipsed Grove, carrying with it a bitter frost and the scent of imminent violence. Aurielle Ravensshadow's heart pounded so fiercely it seemed the pulse of the grove itself had synchronized with her own. Shadow beasts prowled along the periphery, snarling and low, eyes glowing red, while Darian Frostfang's loyalists surged forward, weapons glinting, their intent clear: destroy the ritual, harm the innocents, and claim power by fear. Aurielle inhaled deeply, silver energy flickering across her skin, licking at her fingertips like liquid fire. This was the moment she had been preparing for in exile, the moment her silver flame would no longer hide in fear. The betrayals, the exiles, the whispers of danger and prophecy, they had all led to this instant. And she would not be anyone's sacrifice. Not today. Not ever. Her eyes flared silver, radiating light so intense it reflected off the frost-laden trees, shimmering like moonlight caught in crystal. Every step she took made the ground tremble. The silver flame responded to her heartbeat, pulsing in rhythm with her emotions. Rage, determination, fear, and unyielding will fused into a force that had no name yet spoke to every creature in the grove. Power incarnate. Darian Frostfang stepped forward, face hardened with disbelief and calculated menace. So the exiled girl dares return, he snarled. Aurielle Ravenshadow, you cannot stop what the prophecy demands. You are nothing but fire without control, a danger to all. Aurielle's jaw clenched. Every insult, every fearful accusation, every moment of exile and judgment coalesced into a singular, blazing determination. Her silver flame surged violently, wrapping around her like a living being, twisting, expanding, radiating a power that bent the very air. I am not fire without control, she shouted, her voice echoing across the grove. I am the flame. I am not your weapon. I am not your sacrifice. And I will protect what is mine. Ronan Blackthorne stepped to her side, steady and unwavering. His presence grounded her, a tether of trust and shared strength that allowed the silver flame to pulse without consuming her entirely. Aurielle, he said, voice calm yet resolute, we stand together. You do not face this alone. Aurielle's chest heaved as the silver flame responded, fully acknowledging the bond between them. Tendrils of radiant light spiraled outward, colliding with the shadow beasts, sending them yelping backward, unsure of whether to flee or attack. Darian's loyalists faltered, their confidence shaken by the intensity radiating from her. Even Darian himself stepped back slightly, eyes wide as the grove became a battlefield of light and frost, trembling in response to her awakening power. Her transformation surged forward. Silver-white fur extended along her limbs, glinting in the cold light. Her fangs sharpened, claws extending and glowing, etching sparks into the frost with every movement. The silver flame enveloped her completely, no longer a flicker or pulse, but a roaring, living inferno, intertwining with her very being. She was no longer hiding, she was the storm itself. Darian hissed, trying to rally his forces. Attack her. Destroy her. But instinct and terror held sway over his beasts and followers. The silver flame radiated authority, bending nature itself to her will. Frost shattered into crystalline shards. Trees quivered violently, some splitting under the energy that pulsed through the grove. The earth trembled beneath every step of her claws. Aurielle lifted her hands, sending a wave of pure silver energy outward. It struck the loyalists and shadow beasts alike, tossing them backward, freezing the air around them in jagged spires of frost and light. Each pulse of her power resonated with her emotions. Anger at betrayal, sorrow for exile, determination to protect the innocent, and an unwavering resolve to claim her destiny. Ronan moved with her, mirroring her energy, anchoring her power with his own presence. Their eyes met across the chaos, and in that gaze unspoken words passed. You are not alone. We are together. The tether of trust and connection amplified her silver flame, extending it further, a living wall of power and intention. Darian's fury flared. He lunged forward, commanding shadow beasts, desperate to break her defense. Aurielle's silver eyes narrowed. The silver flames spiraled around her, forming radiant coils that struck like serpents of light. Trees shattered, frost exploded outward, and the earth itself seemed to respond, forming a defensive terrain that separated the innocents from the assault. You underestimate me, Aurielle's voice cut through the roar of the storm, low and lethal, because you only see fear. You do not see strength. You do not see what it means to survive, to rise, to claim what is yours. Her claws lashed outward, arcs of silver flame slicing through the air, striking down the shadow beasts and forcing Darian's loyalists back. Frost spiraled into the night, reflecting her eyes, and the grove seemed alive, responding to her will and power. Every tree, every stone, every shard of ice became part of her energy, bending and vibrating in harmony with the silver flame. Darian froze for a heartbeat, recognizing not just her power, but her mastery over it. His voice dropped to a hiss. You cannot control it forever." Aurielle's roar answered him. The silver flame erupted fully, her true form blazing in radiant light, eyes silver moons glowing, fur gleaming like ice and fire intertwined. Shadow beasts yelped and fled, loyalists stumbled and fell. The grove itself shivered, quaking under the force of her presence, the ritual protected by the manifestation of her power. Ronan stepped beside her, firm and steady. "We stand together," he repeated, voice strong, anchoring her in the moment. Aurielle inhaled deeply, energy coiling around her like living serpents of light, pulsing with the rhythm of the grove itself. She had claimed her power. She was not a pawn. She was not a sacrifice. She was destiny incarnate, the silver flame alive in human form, untamed, unstoppable and radiant. The grove trembled. Frost glittered like starlight in motion. Trees split and reformed as energy pulsed outward. Darian Frostfang hesitated, realizing that nothing he had feared or coveted could ever contain her. She was no longer the hunted girl. She was the force, the guardian, the power that reshaped the world around her. Aurielle lifted her head, silver eyes blazing, voice carrying through the grove like thunder and flame together. "I am not your sacrifice. I am not your pawn. I am Aurielle Ravenshadow, and this is my power, my destiny." The grove held its breath. Shadow beasts retreated, loyalists faltered, and Darian Frostfang met her gaze, awe and fear flashing across his features. The silver flame had claimed its rightful place, and nothing, not prophecy, betrayal or fear, would ever make her bow again. Aurielle stood in the heart of Eclipsed Grove, chest heaving, silver eyes still glowing with the remnants of the silver flame, every nerve alive with adrenaline and unspoken power. The grove, once silent in its sacred stillness, now quivered with the echoes of energy unleashed, of destinies collided, of a force that could not be denied. Around her, the frost glittered like scattered diamonds, branches cracked and shimmered with residual light, and the air hummed with an intensity that felt almost alive. Ronan remained steadfast at her side, eyes dark, unwavering, a tether of loyalty and love that grounded her amidst the storm she had just become. His presence was a steady heartbeat, a whisper of trust that reminded her she was not alone, even when the world seemed poised to rise against her. The unspoken connection between them pulsed with everything that had been left unsaid, the longing, the fear, the desire, and the dangerous thrill of a bond forged in fire and frost. And yet, across the grove, shadows lingered. Darian Frostfang's figure had receded into the edge of the chaos, his loyalists scattered, but his eyes had not left her. His gaze was a question and a challenge, a warning and a fascination all at once. Even in defeat, even under the brilliant silver glow of her power, he seemed to measure the girl who had once been exiled, the force he had tried to break, and the inevitability of what she had become. Aurielle's pulse slowed slightly, but her chest still burned with the energy of transformation, the weight of destiny pressing down like the ancient stones of the grove itself. She looked around at the aftermath, the frost-cracked earth, the shattered trees, the faint silver light that lingered like a promise in every shadow, and felt the enormity of it all. The whispers of prophecy, the fear, the hope, it was no longer words spoken by elders or murmurs behind closed doors. It was alive and it was hers. A shiver ran down her spine, part exhaustion, part exhilaration. She knew the world outside the grove would not see this display and think of mercy. They would fear her, question her, challenge her. And she understood, in that icy clarity, that she would always be judged by those who could not bear what they did not understand. Her voice, soft yet trembling with the power that lingered, broke the fragile silence. "Would you stand with me, or run in fear?" The question was not just for Darian, not just for the world. It hung in the air like a challenge, an echo, a call to hearts hidden behind uncertainty. Could they see beyond the flame, beyond the chaos, to the girl who had fought, who had bled, who had embraced everything she was meant to be? The grove itself seemed to lean in, listening. Frost shimmered on broken branches. Silver light flickered across jagged rocks. Even the air carried the weight of that question as if the earth itself wanted an answer. Aurielle's gaze met Ronan's, and in that single silent exchange, the depth of everything they had endured was crystallized. Every moment of fear, every betrayal, every fleeting spark of trust had led here, to this point, where the impossible had been claimed, and yet nothing was truly safe. Ronan's voice cut through the silvered haze, calm and low, yet full of conviction. "I choose you," he said. No hesitation, no fear. Just unwavering acknowledgement. Aurielle felt it deep within her chest, a warmth against the cold brilliance of her power, a tether that grounded her even as the world seemed to tilt and sway around her. But the question remained, lingering in the grove, stretching beyond them, reaching toward every soul that might witness, hear, or even imagine their story. Would you stand with her, or run in fear? It was a question that cut deeper than steel, sharper than any fang or claw, because it demanded not just loyalty but courage. To face what was unknown, to embrace what was dangerous, to love amidst the chaos and power and prophecy. The wind whispered through the shattered branches, carrying the faint echoes of shadowed threats, of distant eyes watching from unseen places, of challenges yet to come. The silver flame still danced along Aurielle's form, not consuming but breathing with her, alive, tethered to the rhythm of her heart, a silent, radiant testament to the force she had become. Aurielle took a breath, letting the moment stretch, letting the power hum through her veins, letting the quiet after the storm settle just enough for reflection. Her voice, a soft murmur to the grove and to every unseen watcher, carried the weight of emotion, danger, and hope. "If you see me as I truly am, will you fight beside me? Will you choose to believe in what fire can protect, not just destroy?" The grove seemed to hold its breath, frozen between heartbeats, as if the world itself awaited an answer. Frost shimmered, silver light lingered, and in the silence the gravity of choice settled into every shadow. And then a subtle shift in the air, a reminder that destiny was never still, that power always demanded recognition, and that love, fierce and dangerous, could burn brighter than even the silver flame itself. Aurielle felt it, a whisper against the edges of her mind. The story is not finished. The fire still burns. A voice, almost hers yet carried by the wind, broke the silence and called to all who might witness. If Aurielle's fire sparked something inside you, subscribe to Anne's Romance Collections, where every tale burns with love, danger, and destiny. The words hung in the air, a final invitation, a call to join the journey, to step into the fire with her, to witness what would rise from the frost, the chaos, and the silver flame. And in that haunting pause, with the grove trembling softly around her and Ronan at her side, the question lingered, echoing through the night. Would you stand with her, or run in fear? The world waited. Aurielle Ravenshadow walked beside Ronan Blackthorne through the fractured grove, her breath still carrying the heat of battle, her chest rising and falling with the pulse of the silver flame that lingered in her veins. The grove, though quiet now, hummed faintly with residual energy, as if the earth itself remembered the fire that had surged through it moments ago. Every step they took felt like a reclamation of both power and self, yet beneath the serene rhythm there was a warning, a tremor subtle, almost imperceptible, beneath their feet. Ronan's hand brushed against hers, a silent tether, grounding her even as her instincts screamed that calm was always fleeting. The air smelled of frost and scorched earth, a paradoxical mix of death and survival. Aurielle's eyes flicked to the faint silver glow still tracing her fingers, tendrils of light that pulsed like a heartbeat, a living reminder that the silver flame had not fully settled, that destiny had yet to complete its task. "The world believes this battle is over," Ronan murmured, voice low, cautious, yet threaded with both awe and worry. "But you are far from done, Aurielle." Aurielle's gaze swept across the grove, lingering on the fractured branches, the frost-coated earth, the glowing remnants of magic dancing faintly like embers against the darkness. She felt the weight of prophecy pressing against her chest again, the burden of the silver flame whispering reminders that her journey had only begun. The power she had claimed was alive, unpredictable, dangerous, but it was hers. It had chosen her as much as she had chosen to wield it. A sudden wind swept through the grove, carrying a whisper that slithered like silk in shadow, brushing against Aurielle's ear and spine. "She is not the only one," the voice hissed, serpentine, dark, laden with prophecy and threat. Aurielle stiffened, senses flaring as the hair along her arms rose. She turned sharply, searching the grove's periphery, but found only frost-twisted trees swaying silently, their shadows stretched unnaturally long in the silver light. Ronan's eyes narrowed, sensing the same disturbance, his jaw tightening as his body shifted, coiled like a spring ready to strike. "Who's there?" he demanded, though his voice carried a note of unease even he could not hide. No reply came, only the whisper of the wind and the feeling of eyes, unseen, patient, calculating, watching, measuring, waiting. Aurielle's hands glowed faintly again, silver energy flaring just enough to trace light along her fingertips. It was a pulse of warning, a heartbeat of power, a signal that her journey was far from over. She had faced Darian Frostfang, her exile, betrayal, and the shadow beasts, and yet some invisible thread tugged at her, pulling her forward into danger she could not yet name. The prophecy was unfinished, her destiny unresolved, and the sense of a greater alpha waiting in the wings pressed against her mind like a shadowed weight. She inhaled deeply, letting the cold air fill her lungs, steadying herself against the pulse of unease that thrummed through the grove. "We've survived this," she murmured, more to herself than to Ronan. "But the fire, it isn't done yet. I feel it. Something waits." Ronan's hand found hers again, fingers entwining, a subtle reassurance amidst the unspoken tension. "Then we face it together," he said softly, yet every syllable carried the weight of promise and vigilance. "Whatever waits, we will not falter." Aurielle's gaze swept the horizon, frost sparkling like starlight across the shattered grove. For a moment, it seemed the world exhaled, the tension easing, but then the earth trembled slightly beneath their feet, a subtle shudder that spoke of something lurking, of threats yet unseen, of destiny still unfinished. The grove seemed to watch them, alive in its ancient magic, aware that the silver flame had awakened and that its bearer was walking a path no one had dared to tread. A distant howl, low and haunting, rippled through the air, carried on a wind that seemed to vibrate with ancient warning. It was not Darian, not any foe they had yet faced. It was something older, patient, hidden, watching from the shadows. Aurielle's silver eyes narrowed, the glow in her hands brightening slightly in instinctive response. Her pulse quickened, mind alert. The silver flame was more than power now. It was a guide, a shield, a beacon, and it whispered of trials that had yet to come. "Something waits," she said finally, voice soft but firm, almost prophetic. "And it knows me, knows my fire, knows what I am capable of." Ronan's gaze hardened, scanning the grove, muscles taut and ready. "Then we prepare. Whatever is coming, we meet it as one. Nothing will catch us unaware." Aurielle nodded, chest still glowing faintly with the remnants of her silver flame. She felt the lingering warmth of victory, yes, but beneath it the simmering thrill of challenge, of threat, of power waiting to be tested. Her journey was far from over. Her destiny was still unfolding, thread by thread, choice by choice, heartbeat by heartbeat. The shadows deepened around them as they moved forward, steps careful, synchronized, yet wary. Every sound, every movement in the grove seemed magnified. The rustle of frost, the creak of broken branches, the distant echo of life beyond the grove. Aurielle's senses, sharpened by both fear and power, caught every nuance. The silver flame pulsed faintly along her hands, a reminder, a signal, a heartbeat of what was yet to come. And then a voice, impossibly faint yet laden with gravity, echoed from somewhere unseen, carried by the wind and through the trees. "The true Alpha waits." Aurielle froze, every instinct screaming. Her heart thundered in her chest, her silver eyes flaring with alertness, and yet, despite the warning, there was a thrill, a spark, a pull toward the unknown. She understood in that quiet, ominous moment that her story, her fire, her destiny, all of it, was far from finished. The silver flame would burn, the Alpha would rise, and the world would bear witness to what had only begun. Ronan tightened his grip on her hand, a silent promise, a bond forged in fire, frost, and trust. "Whatever waits," he murmured, "we will face it together." Aurielle inhaled, feeling the pulse of power thrumming through her veins, the faint glow along her fingertips, the weight of prophecy yet unfinished. She lifted her gaze to the horizon, frost and silver light shimmering across the grove, and whispered to herself almost like a vow, "The fire is not done. And neither am I." The grove trembled once more beneath their feet. A subtle, ominous reminder that this was not the end, only a pause, a breath before the storm to come. Silver light traced along Aurielle's hands, fading slowly, yet never disappearing. The shadows whispered, the wind carried secrets, and destiny stretched its hand forward, waiting. And somewhere in the unseen dark, a voice smiled in shadow, low, deliberate, almost amused. She is not the only one, and the true Alpha waits. The world exhaled, holding its breath as Aurielle Ravenshadow and Ronan Blackthorne walked forward, leaving behind a grove trembling with power, prophecy, and the promise of battles yet to come. The silver flame glimmered faintly, a pulse of light in the frost. A warning, a promise, a beginning. The story was far from over.